This week abroad. Dominica ripped apart by Hurricane Maria, bringing Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt to tears. Corruption at Trinidad state-owned Petrotrin exposed. And Mexico rocked by a second mega earthquake in as many weeks. Hello and welcome to This Week Abroad. I'm Andrew Lately. Let's go around the region. Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt broke down in tears as he described the total devastation on the island after Hurricane Maria. The Prime Minister was speaking with ABS television and radio in neighboring Antigua. Communication with Dominica is still down, so it was difficult for the government to get information out without the Prime Minister leaving the country. Prime Minister Skerritt said Dominica was still picking up the pieces after being battered by Tropical Storm Erica in 2015. Now they're back to ground zero.
We need a lot of tarpaulins and supplies.
It's a difficult, it's really an extraordinarily difficult moment for Prime Minister Skerritt, who, as he said, has given us the opportunity to share his story with the world.
He said the preliminary death toll is 15, but that could increase as there are still villages which are out of reach.
We don't have the total count because we have not been to some communities. I have been able to land in some of the communities, and the authorities have provided me with the number of people who have died. So far, we would have buried in excess of 15 people. It is in one village, 13 people missing. In another village, 5 people missing. Another community, 2. And we can say that because their homes are no longer standing. They've been washed by the rivers there. We have not been to many villages, and just going by air, looking at the situation, if there are no fatalities, then it's a miracle.
The Prime Minister said he's amazed the death toll wasn't in the hundreds. He said what the country needs now more than anything are helicopter services to transport drinking water to citizens.
The world is mobilizing to assist us. We're going to need a lot of helicopter services to airlift the supplies to the respective communities. So if anybody's listening to me, helicopter services are going to be critical to get the supplies to people in large quantities so that we can minimize the misery and the suffering, and also the fact that they really do need the water supply. Every village I've been to, they have indicated me water, and supplies for the babies and infants.
Prime Minister Skerritt says it won't be easy, but he's urging Dominicans to band together as he asks for international aid to help rebuild the country.
It's going to be a very long and difficult journey. But I am confident that if we remain united as a people, we can bounce back. It will take us some time. As for myself, I am completely committed to the country and doing what I can to assist with raising the necessary financing and making contact. I had originally no intention of going to the United Nations, but I have decided to go, so I'll be traveling to New York tomorrow to address the United Nations General Assembly, to speak to the international community, to have meetings with the UN Secretary General, to outline Dominica's situation and how we believe the international community could assist us.
Meanwhile, the outpouring of emergency relief to Dominica is intensifying as Caribbean neighbors pool efforts to provide help.
We were trying to get a helicopter for the southeast to go drop off supplies. We have people in New Jersey, New York, all over the world from that part of the island who have basically pledged to helping out. So what we're trying to do right now, as I said, is to try to get a helicopter to at least drop the food in those areas, at least immediate need, first aid kits, water purification kits and that kind of stuff to them, so in case of anything, at least they can help themselves.
Roman Catholic Bishop Jason Gordon has pledged to travel the region and collect items Dominicans would need to rebuild their country.
And we've been picking up stuff throughout Barbados and all of our islands are picking up stuff and picking up collections because they're going to need money to rebuild also. What this is going to call for is us moving from the isolation that we have as individuals and as nations and as nation states to understanding ourselves in this precarious Caribbean that we now live in, where the forces of nature have done things in the last 3 to 5 years that we have not seen before.
Prisoners are roaming free on Tortuga in the British Virgin Islands after Hurricane Irma damaged the prison there. Business owners are now feeling the pinch as looting is on the rise. Here's more from ITV News.
Perched on a hillside, the island's prison is no longer fit for purpose. Like everywhere else, it was damaged in the hurricane, and its 100+ inmates now come and go at will. We watched as one prisoner left by the front gate. Behind bars here were some of the island's most dangerous men, and there are concerns now that some of them are on the loose. The fact that the prison's been breached doesn't just pose a real security risk, it's also spreading fear at a time this place needs it least. We drove around with a former prison officer who spotted 4 inmates in a single afternoon.
Lightning! Tell me something. You got people out there? Where? Of the jail.
This man, brazenly enjoying his freedom, should be doing time for robbery.
Why is he walking the streets when he should be in prison?
Because he came out. Because of the hurricane.
One morning they stole about, I would say like $4,000 in liquor.
Security is now on the long list of problems here. This warehouse was looted. The owner accepts desperate people do desperate things.
$25,000 worth of stuff, you know, that the took and went away with. The police can't do anything. This is a hurricane and they just left.
The Foreign Secretary, here on a flying visit, said the crisis response had now turned a corner.
Levels of security are improving. The government and the governor, Gus Jasper, are working well together. The roads are being cleared, and today the UK is putting in another 25 million.
But the first British police have just arrived and taken up positions at key locations. There are now 49 volunteer officers here, ready to patrol the streets and help enforce the curfew. The presence of the Royal Marines has also brought some reassurance. British military engineers are here too. These islands don't just need aid, they need the means to organise and deliver it as well. The local government offices have been destroyed, first by nature, then by looters. Everything here is in pieces now. British aid and law enforcement can't come fast enough to an island now vulnerable on every front. Penny Marshall News at 10, British Virgin Islands.
Up next, a tale of 2 companies providing hundreds of barrels of oil and gas, one without any licenses. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week Abroad. Hundreds of people are dead after a powerful 7.1 magnitude quake rocked southeast Mexico. Emergency crews and civilian helpers are searching for survivors trapped under the rubble. More in this report.
Mexico City immediately after the quake. First responders and volunteers swarmed to collapsed buildings throughout the vast city. Many areas lost electrical power. The city's airport shut down, preventing President Enrique Peña Nieto from returning to the capital.
We are returning, but we have to land at another airport because Mexico City Airport has stopped operating. For the time being, we cannot land there. We're going to Mexico City to see exactly what has happened.
On the ground, rescuers frantically searched for survivors trapped under the rubble. Search efforts have been slow because of the fragility of many structures. Authorities say many more buildings in the densely populated city are still at risk of collapse. Many locals are in shock, trying to process what they've seen.
The ground started moving. It was very strong. The windows started to break. People started to leave their homes. This building in front collapsed. I saw emergency workers rescue one person. They were in the middle of the building.
The earthquake struck on the anniversary of a previous earthquake in 1985. That trembler killed thousands of people. Tuesday's quake struck just as many people took part in drills designed to prepare citizens for exactly a disaster like this. The federal government has declared a state of disaster in Mexico City and has enacted an emergency plan which deploys the armed forces in coordination with local authorities. And as night falls, tragedy confirmed at this collapsed elementary school. Authorities say at least 20 children died here. But the search is still on for dozens more children and adults still missing. Emergency crews ask onlookers to remain silent for a chance to hear those who may have survived.
The Greek government says the country's economy has turned a corner and is now on a growth path. More in this report.
I think if you look at any of the economic variables, you'll see they're all in an upward trend. Growth has come into Greece, both in 2 quarters that we have seen. And all indications is that Greece is going to have a real growth rate of around 2%. It's 1.8 that's been suggested in the forecast. But we think that we will be at 2% and probably most likely 3% next year. As you know, we're going through a 3rd review process. We are very confident by the November Eurogroup meeting we will have completed, if not all, most of them, and therefore I think we will not have the difficulty that we had in the previous review, which took much longer than it should have. Well, I think that the governor of Greece has his own view, but I think we have shown that we can deliver what we have agreed. And this is what we'll continue to do. We are very consistent in delivering exactly what we have agreed. We look at what happened since 2016 and 2015, and I think that the unemployment rate has come down more than 5.5%. It's slow coming down, but it is coming down. And the government is actually concentrating on particular active labor market policies to have a much bigger effect in the unemployment rate. But growth in employment is very important, and I think that that shows that Greece has turned the corner, is on the growth path, and it shows its vibrancy. There will be some debt management, but certainly next year we will be back in the market because it will be the end of the memorandum of understanding, which would then have to be able to refinance our own bonds.
UK MPs are paying considerably more for security now after a murder of their colleague Joe Cox last June. Between June 2016 and July 2017, £3 million was spent on MP security. That's 18 times as much as the £170,000 spent in 2015-2016. Here's more.
Vandalised posters, abuse on social media. MPs are supposed to represent the people, not feel threatened by them.
The abuse and intimidation of candidates.
Today, many described how politician has turned punchbag as MPs debated their own treatment.
During the last general election, a teacher tells the class of my 13-year-old boy that nobody should talk to him because he is the son of a Conservative MP.
The threat was, shoot her, then pull her teeth out of her jaw while she fades away.
Where's my shotgun? These were the words I heard from the receptionist at a venue where I was holding a surgery a year to the day after the murder of Joe Cox.
It was the shooting and stabbing of this MP which led many others to review their own safety, as their spending clearly shows. In 2015-16, around £170,000 was spent on extra security for MPs. But figures released to ITV News reveal it's jumped to almost £3 million since Joe Cox was murdered. That's around a 17-fold increase.
The money goes on protecting MPs once they leave the security of this place. From panic alarms to panic rooms, CCTV and even reinforced glass windows on homes and offices. But none of that can protect MPs from the abuse.
Female MPs in particular are the target. Stella Creasy has had rape threats. A man was jailed for sending Luciana Berger anti-Semitic abuse, with Diane Abbott the most regular target of racism.
And if the person who does it keeps doing it, I block them.
The Scottish MP Christine Jardine says she got online abuse while she was at her own husband's funeral and is tired of having to police things herself.
A lot of the stuff which appears on social media, you couldn't possibly put in a newspaper, a magazine or on television. It would be against the law. So it's time that we started to regard social media not just as this new thing for kids to play with, but as a serious form of communication.
The Prime Minister's already started an inquiry into this abuse, worried it puts many off politics. MPs accept they need a thick skin, but it is not impenetrable. Paul Brandt, News at 10.
That's it for this week abroad. Thanks for joining us. We're back next week with more regional and international stories. But remember to catch BATV News weeknights at 7:30 p.m. I'm Andrew Laidley. Pleasant viewing. Welcome back to This Week Abroad. The day of reckoning has come for two drilling companies operating in Trinidad and Tobago. The companies appear to be owned by the same people, but are registered under slightly different names and started operations at different times. A company called A&V Drilling and Workover Limited was awarded a 10-year contract or license to operate fields in Catskill Moruga East blocks in 2009. But investigations show that another company called A&V Oil and Gas, which was incorporated in 2009, has also been providing Petrotrin with resources. Whereas A&V Drilling and Workover Limited was licensed to provide the services, A&V Oil and Gas was not. When Trinidadian media workers sought information on the matter, they were attacked by oil field workers. This week abroad, we speak with Trinidadian journalist Ian Wason to help us delve deeper into this developing story. Hello and welcome to the show, Ian. Firstly, what is the fake oil scandal really about?
Well, the fake oil scandal actually began just about 3 weeks ago when the opposition leader, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, speaking to her supporters in a political meeting, allegedly reading from a commission report commissioned by the state-owned oil company Petrotrin, and it revealed different allegations of wrongdoing, including this fake oil that A&V Drilling Company was actually selling to Petrotrin to refine. So they would sell Petrotrin oil, and Petrotrin would refine the oil as the oil refinery. And they were saying that there were a lot of oil that they could not account for that Petrotrin was paying AV Oil and Gas Drilling Company for. So that's the fake oil they're talking about, oil that was not accounted for by Petrotrin.
Is anyone being suspected of corruption in this matter?
Well, her father, Mr. Nazem Bash, is in fact the owner of the A&V Oil Company. But as up to yesterday, I think the opposition leader, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, was facing a lawsuit by Mr. Bash, who, based on the lawsuit, is claiming that he is actually innocent of the charges. And yes, Alison Bash is a senator, but her name has not been called in relation to that matter. Her name has been called because, of course, the opposition party want to politicize it and want to claim that she's only a senator because of the friendship between the Prime Minister and her father.
Has the opposition leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar said anything about the situation since this took place under her administration?
No, she has not. And of course, we don't really expect her to. We expect her to stand by what she said, even at the face of facing that lawsuit.
But how was A&V Oil and Gas able to provide a state-owned company with so much oil and gas without licenses? And who should be held accountable for this?
This I'm not too sure about, and of course I don't want to comment on too much until the full report is out. So I don't want to comment on that too much. These are some of the things we need to wait and see, because the initial report was just a draft report, and it's not a report that has been reviewed. And until we get that, then we can be sure of what happened.
What is the next step for the Media Association and the companies under scrutiny there?
The media associations called to boycott the tour by AV oil and gas drilling company that was supposed to have taken place yesterday, stemmed from an altercation that taken last week, when some reporters, in an effort to follow up on the initial story, they went to the compound of the home of Mr. Bashk, and they were assaulted. Not sure if it was Mr. Bashk or the oil company itself, but they were assaulted by security there. And the media condemned the attack, and they said that they would not go to the tour that AV and the AV gas company eventually offered to the media, because they subsequently sent a release condemning the attack and issued sort of an apology to the media. However, that wasn't enough, and the Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago decided it will not take up the offer and urged its members not to go to the tour. And of course, I think that only 2 reporters went. But of course, when some reporters they get the issue from the authorities, they have to go. But it wasn't as well supported, even if just two reporters went for 2 newspapers.
Ian Wason, journalist in the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. Now we go further abroad in a bit, but first, here's a look at how some of the major international commodities ended trading this week. When we come back, digging through the rubble, Mexico rocked by another massive earthquake. International stories are next.